It's a simple question, a whisper, just a few words spoken in a moment between two men on a brightly lit stage. But nothing is simple when one of those men is Elvis Presley. The question itself has become a piece of folklore. It's a tiny detail in a massive legend, but it's a detail that matters. It tells you everything you need to know about him. Not the icon, not the myth, but the man, the musician. To understand the whisper, you have to understand the stage. This wasn't the 1950s anymore. This was Vegas, the International Hotel, the biggest showroom in the city. A place built on spectacle. Everything was larger than life. The orchestra, the stage, the audience, the expectation. And at the center of it all was him. He had come back. After years of making movies, some good, most forgettable, he had decided to be a singer again. The '68 comeback special had reminded the world who he was. It was raw. He was dressed in black leather, looking dangerous and vital. He wasn't acting, he was singing, he was playing, he was sweating, he was Elvis. Vegas was the next step. It was a conquest, but it was also a risk. Could he hold a stage that big, night after night? Could he still connect with an audience without a script? He answered that question on opening night. He didn't just hold the stage, he owned it. He was a force of nature, he moved with a coiled energy that was part panther, part preacher. His voice was bigger and richer than ever. It could be a tender caress one moment and a thunderous roar the next. He was funny, he was charming, he was in complete control, but he wasn't alone. He knew he couldn't be. The sound he wanted, the power he needed, couldn't come from just one man. It had to come from a band. A real band. A killer band. So he made a phone call. The man who answered the phone was James Burton. If you didn't know the name, you definitely knew the sound. And James Burton was a legend among musicians. They called him the master of the Telecaster. He had played the guitar on countless hits. He was the man behind those sharp, biting guitar licks on Ricky Nelson's records. He was there when Dale Hawkins recorded Susie Q. He was one of the most sought-after session guitarists in Los Angeles, a key member of the Wrecking Crew, that anonymous group of studio wizards who played on thousands of songs for artists like the Beach Boys, the Mamas and the Papas, and Frank Sinatra. James Burton had a style all his own. It was a mix of country, blues, and rockabilly. He could make his guitar sing, cry, or scream. He bent strings in ways that made other guitarists scratch their heads. His playing was clean, precise, and full of fire. He was a quiet, humble man. He didn't seek the spotlight, he just loved to play the guitar. So Elvis calls him. He says he's putting a band together for Vegas. He says he needs the best. He asks James if he'll do it. James, of course, says yes. Who would say no? And so the TCB Band was born. Taking care of business. That was the motto. And that's what they did. They were a hand-picked group of the finest musicians you could find. Ronnie Tutt on drums, a powerhouse who could follow Elvis's every move. Jerry Sheff on bass, a fluid and creative player who locked everything together. Larry Muhabarak on piano, John Wilkinson on rhythm guitar, a full orchestra behind them. It was a musical army, and Elvis was the general. They rehearsed relentlessly. They worked to create a sound that was both massive and tight. A sound that could fill that giant showroom and still feel like rock and roll. A sound that could support the greatest entertainer in the world. And they found it. On stage, they were a machine. They moved as one, they breathed as one. Elvis would make a move, a gesture, a dip of his head, and the band would turn on a dime. They followed his every whim, his every spontaneous decision. It was a musical conversation happening in real time in front of thousands of people. And in the middle of this perfectly rehearsed, high-powered spectacle, there was this song. It was an old song, a rock and roll standard, a song so fundamental to the genre that it felt like it had always existed. It was a story about a country boy who could play a guitar just like ringing a bell. The pace was frantic. The energy was relentless. It was pure distilled rock and roll. A 3-minute explosion of joy and rebellion. Elvis loved the song. He sang it with a wild, almost desperate energy. It was a connection back to his roots. Back to the music that had inspired him as a kid in Memphis. He would prowl the stage, his white jumpsuit clinging to him with sweat. The crowd would be on its feet, a roaring sea of noise and adoration. He would sing the verse telling the story of the boy with the guitar, and then would come the moment, the solo. The original record had a guitar solo that was part of the DNA of rock music. It was an iconic piece of playing, known by every kid who ever picked up a guitar. But Elvis wasn't a lead guitarist. He could play rhythm, and he did, often with a raw percussive power. But he wasn't the guy to peel off a lightning-fast, intricate solo. He knew his strengths. He was the voice, he was the presence, he was the focal point. But he also knew he had a secret weapon standing just a few feet away to his right. he had James Burton. So the moment arrives, the song is barreling forward like a freight train. The verse ends. The music needs to go somewhere else. It needs to explode. The focus of the entire room, the entire performance, needs to shift for just a few seconds from the singer to the guitar. This is the handoff. This is the moment of trust. Elvis finishes the line. He turns his head slightly. He looks directly at James. He leans in close, almost touching his ear. The microphones don't pick it up. The audience can see the gesture, but they can't hear the words. It's a private moment in a very public space. A quiet command in the middle of a hurricane of sound. He whispers something. And then it happens. James Burton steps forward. He leans into his Fender Telecaster, and he unleashes a torrent of notes that sound both completely new and perfectly familiar. It's not a copy of the original solo. It's a reinterpretation. It's James Burton's soul pouring out through the strings. It's fast, it's clean, it's full of his signature string bends and chicken pickin' licks. It's a masterclass in taste, technique, and pure, unadulterated fire. He takes the spirit of the original and injects it with his own unique genius. For those 30 seconds or so, he is the star of the show. Elvis steps back, a slight smile on his face, watching him play. He's not the king anymore. He's a fan. He's a band leader watching his guy just kill it. The solo ends. The band crashes back in. Elvis grabs the mic and launches into the next verse, the energy in the room somehow even higher than before. The moment has passed, but it hangs in the air. The question remains, what did he say? Over the years, the story has been told and retold. By band members, by fans who were there, by James Burton himself. It's become a small but significant part of the Elvis legend. Because what he said was so simple, so direct, so perfect for the moment. There was no complex instruction, no musical direction. There was no give me a solo in the key of B flat, make it feel like a runaway train. There was no play it just like the record. He leaned in, looked the master of the Telecaster in the eye and whispered. The words were a version of this, a simple, powerful command. It wasn't about notes or chords. It was about spirit, it was about permission, it was about trust. He said, play it, James. Sometimes, Burton remembers it as, go, James, go, or let him have it. The exact phrasing changes slightly with each telling, as memories tend to do over decades. But the message was always the same. It was a release, it was a green light. It was Elvis, the biggest star on the planet, turning to his guitarist and saying, in essence, this is your moment. I trust you completely. Show them who you are. Do what you do best. Play the guitar. Think about the weight of that. This is a man whose every move is scrutinized. A man who commands the stage with absolute authority. For him to willingly cede the spotlight, to step back and shine it on someone else, speaks volumes. It's not something a small person does. It's an act of deep confidence. Confidence in himself and confidence in the man standing next to him. It was an acknowledgement of mastery. Elvis knew he couldn't play what James Burton could play. And he wasn't afraid to admit it. In that moment, he wasn't just an employer. He was a collaborator. He was recognizing the genius of his hired gun and giving him the freedom to use it. It's a lesson in leadership. A great leader doesn't have to be the best at everything. A great leader knows how to surround himself with the best people and then trust them to do their jobs. That whisper was the key that unlocked the solo. It wasn't just a cue, it was an injection of confidence. It was the general telling his best soldier to charge, and James Burton always answered the call. He delivered night after night. That solo became a highlight of the show. People waited for it. They knew it was coming. They would watch for the turn of the head, the lean in, the whisper, and then the explosion. It's a beautiful, simple story. In a world of hype and spectacle, of jumpsuits and flashing lights, it's a moment of pure, honest musicianship. It's about the connection between two artists at the peak of their powers. One, a global icon reinventing himself. The other, a quiet master of his instrument, finally getting his due on the world's biggest stage. The whisper cuts through all the noise of the legend. It reminds us that underneath the myth, Elvis was a musician. He loved music, he loved playing with a great band, he loved the feeling of creating something powerful and real in front of an audience. And he respected the hell out of the people who could help him do that. He didn't need to shout. He didn't need to make a grand gesture. All he needed was a few quiet words. A simple instruction, a transfer of trust from one man to another. It was a whisper that led to a roar. A roar that came from 6 strings in a master's hands. A roar that was the perfect answer to the story of a boy from the backwoods of Louisiana. The story of a boy who never ever learned to read or write so well, but he could play a guitar just like ringing a bell. The story of Johnny B. Goode.